Danny Murphy, I heard you on Monday night, Crystal Palace against Arsenal. I get the impression Palace might have played all night and not scored, but you think I'm wrong in that?
Well, I think Arsenal deserve credit. When they went down to 10 men, they defended really, really well. Nice little tactical tweak, went 3 centre-halves, and they did look reasonably comfortable. But the pressure was building near the end of the game. Palace was really committing.
Yeah.
I don't think they'd have wanted to go on for another 10 minutes.
Right.
But yeah, credit to Arsenal. They got the job done. It was a really intriguing game rather than end-to-end excitement. I thought the way Palace set up, if you want to watch, there's been a lot of criticism of certain teams' midfielders and open spaces in the first couple of weeks. You want to see how to set up a midfield that closes spaces and condenses and knows how to track runners and fill holes and help your centre-halves, then watch that.
It was a bit ruined by the red card, though, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it changed the whole course of the game.
The officiating was poor on the night. I thought it was all over the place. They didn't look comfortable in what they were doing. It wasn't a sending off, wasn't a booking.
Right.
I'm all for the yellows being thrown out, for the petulance, time wasting, the silliness of the coaches barking on and all that. I'm all for it, but simple decisions, especially red cards and stuff, should be. I'm getting to the point where it's more like I just wish there's be a bit more togetherness with it. So all the officials, including VAR, are a team, and there shouldn't be any ego involved in pointing out somebody gets a decision wrong or misses one.
Yeah.
This thing Howard talks about, not Howard, but the association talking about, you don't want to re-ref the game. But wrong is wrong, right is right. Just get the right decision.
But you've also got to get buy-in from the protagonists, because the referees, in fairness to them, are fighting against those that should be actually cooperating. And the reasons why I would suspect there's probably errors being thrown out is because they're not getting support from the players. They're having to push back against a narrative that's been created over years and years and years of players bucking the system, cheating the system, coaches constantly criticising the system. So we're going to find this teething period, like we do in any new initiative, where there's going to be mistakes are made. And the reasons why these mistakes are being made is because the players and the coaches have brought it upon themselves. They've brought this extreme reaction. This is a clear delineation. Howard's come in and gone, no more of this nonsense. And you can see the character of Howard Webb impressing itself over the refereeing fraternity.
Yeah.
And in the longer game, I think that would be better. In the shorter term, it might be a little bit painful and bumpy.
There's some pluses. I think it was strange. I only heard the other day that apparently only, 4 days before the season started, the clubs were told and communicated to regarding these new rules and what's going to happen.
What's up with that? Rules are rules.
Well,
you abide by them.
What's up with it is that maybe it would have been more sensible to get that message out before pre-season started.
But Danny,
let me finish.
Simon's nailed it.
Just so the players and the manager and the staff can actually get used to the new and start changing a bit, and even in the pre-season friendlies,
But it doesn't take Einstein to realise that the players have a lot to do themselves. Simon's right. You look at it the other night. Havertz holds onto the ball forever, gives it to Tomiyasu, who's a bit slow himself, and Tomiyasu gets booked.
But I just said
thanks for that.
I'm
Kai.
fine with that. What I'm not fine with is referees between them, whether it be the ref and the VAR, not being able to see that McAllister was, it wasn't a sending off, or the Wolves penalty in the last minute. They're not about new laws and regulations. They're about incompetence. They're about ridiculous decisions.
That's about subjectivity.
No, it's not.
It is about subjectivity.
There's nobody in the world who thinks the Wolves one wasn't a penalty. There's nobody in the world who thinks McAllister should have been sent off.
That's about subjectivity, because what we're defining, we are, because we're defining intent, right? No one knows what the intent is in a player's mind besides the player. Right?
Okay.
So with that in mind, where we are, and I understand your point, and I concur with your point of view, which is the longer you give people the opportunity to acclimatise something, the more likely you are to get an outcome. Unfortunately, in football, what happens is the longer you give people the opportunity to acclimatise something, the more they think they can debate it. The more they think they can push back against it, the more they can argue against it. And whilst if indeed that is the case, that the refereeing fraternity and the PGMOL drop these rule changes, which, by the way, aren't really rule changes, they're just simply holding the line and saying do things that you should be doing in the first place. And it's a ridiculous situation now that we've got to this situation where referees are having to do what they're having to do to get order back into the game, to get players to understand that ultimately, and I was going off on some tangent yesterday about the ridiculousness of the arguments being put forward by people saying, well, we're going to be on the pitch for 15 minutes longer. And people are saying it with a straight face. And people are suggesting that this is somehow a problem, which they are the architects of all of it. I just think that, like everything else in football, we're in a moment where the road is a little bit bumpy. This bumpy road was created by those that are complaining about the bumpiness of it. So they'll have to get on with it. Yeah. They'll have to accept that there is an authority on the pitch. That authority is the referee. and that should be the end of a discussion, as it often is in other sports. Except football doesn't have that rule.
And it's funny, Danny, you always talk about incompetence amongst the officials. You never label incompetence at any player.
I do.
I mean, it was a mistake, so it was a mistake. And what have they got? They've got the ability to turn it round. So McAllister's got out of it, which is good. And the right decision, of course it is.
Yeah.
But this isn't incompetence. Incompetence makes them sound stupid. They're not stupid, these officials. They are trying their level best to make the game better for everybody.
If trying your best is enough.
Is Howard Webb the right guy for the job?
I think so.
There you go then.
Yeah.
Let him operate in it.
I'm sitting here agreeing with a lot of what you're saying. I hate people trying to stitch other people up and dive in and simulating yellow cards to get someone else done. I hate stupid time wasting. I hate seeing coaches berating the fourth officials, running down and shouting this. Fine, cut it all out. I've got no problem. And I've even got no problem with extra time being played, because that'll get reduced when the players start messing around. All I'm simply saying is that it's been evident in the first couple of weeks that there's a bit of confusion around the big decisions on, especially a couple of the penalties we've seen as well. Some, like more obvious ones, not just subjective, but more. I think 90% of people saying one thing. You'll always get a small minority, whether they're fans of the team, saying another. But why the VAR isn't helping the referees more, my opinion is that I think there's this initiative where they're talking about not re-reffing games. It doesn't matter, I don't think, if it's right that the VAR pulls up the ref and even asks him to look at the monitor a bit more. I still think we've gone away from asking refs to come and have a look at the monitor.
But this is what we asked for, though, wasn't it? Ultimately, there was an indication from people that they want referees on the pitch to have the courage of convictions and to be able to make decisions and to go with their on-field decisions as much as they possibly can. So Howard Webb is now three-line whipping that by saying, in an ideal world, we'd prefer not to re-ref. We'd prefer for referees to be able to own their decisions, to have the strength of their convictions on the field and make in-the-game decisions without VAR constantly coming in and overturning.
I get the sentiment, but it's putting an idea in the head of the guys at VAR that they're thinking about that instead of thinking, is that right or wrong? And I don't like that. I think they should have the freedom and autonomy to be able to go, actually, come on, it's a wrong decision. And I go back to the one at Wolves, right, which was probably the most obvious one so far this season.
I mean, Cascarino in the Times is kind of siding with you, Danny. At the present rate, there'll be 114 cards in this campaign. Trigger-happy approach means referees are not ensuring that games are good, fair and clean. Instead, they're prioritising punishing players. But I believe they're jumping into decisions far too hastily. But they've got to be seen to be the adjudicators. They're in charge, Danny. The players can't have it all. And they've had it all for a while. I think the players have got to abide to the new damned rules.
Yeah, I think one of the problems is because of the petulance and the silly yellows, then you're seeing a few more reds because a more normal tackle that is a yellow and that's it for the game is then being the second yellow and
correct,
it's like always being
and that's the consequence of the initial silliness in the first place.
So I think they'll be reduced. I don't think that's going to be a long-term issue.
Well, it would only be reduced if the players fall in line.
They will fall in line.
It won't be reduced by the referees compromising their view and suddenly the initiative starts to weaken and gets diluted down. Howard Webb, from what I understand, and having had a long conversation with Mike Dean specifically on this subject last week, is absolutely adamant that this is not something that comes through and passes through and all of a sudden they lose their lustre after 3 months.
Let's hope not, because I mean,
it'll be the players that change.
Sam on Monday was correct actually in a few examples on Monday night, which was a bit unusual. That I think because of how the game was going, the referee did let a few things go that in other games they weren't. So there was a couple of examples of Arsenal players doing this, and he didn't book them. And actually, when he saw him, irrelevant to what people think and how many cards he's dishing out, he should have just gone,
yeah, that's
bum,
right.
bum.
That's right.
Because that's going to stop then. But I'm not against the majority of what's being trying to be implemented at all. I just want the big decisions to become a team effort, not this. I don't want to really make the ref look stupid. And I don't necessarily agree that refs are making too many silly decisions. Sometimes they don't make them. And we've had that argument before. They're not making them because they've got VAR in the background. They're trying their best. But some of the big decisions in the first couple of weeks have not had the right conclusion.
I also think it's incumbent, and I'm not suggesting that we have this sort of socialistic approach to the thing, but the football mafia, the football fraternity that constantly is looking to criticise any new initiative should actually be a little bit more vociferous on defending the decision-making process and looking after the referees. Not that I think the referees should be given a pass for making mistakes, not that I want to encourage referees to become little Mussolinis. What I'm suggesting is that the refereeing ideals and the sentiment when you've got the talking heads, whether it's on Match of the Day or whether it's on Sky, that are constantly going after the referee rather than the principle of why the referee is doing this.
Yeah.
Right. And I think there should be a sort of collective force to say, do we agree that the principles of what the referees are trying to achieve is right? Okay, then we need to criticise the execution of it at times, but the principle needs to be supported.
Right.
And I think that's an important message.
Right. I mean, Danny, this is what you get. I mean, there's a guy backing you. Morning, guys. Danny's bang on here. Leave off Jim Simon. Howard Webb, competent, but his cronies definitely are not. In fact, they're terrible. Not true. Not true.
There's some poor refs at the minute, Jim.
There's some, I tell you what, there's some con men players.
Exactly, and I'm all for that. Do you know what?
Why do you call them out?
I always would. But
why don't you call them incontinent? Why do you level egotistical behaviour at them?
I would, as soon as when I see it, I always do. I mean, I was the first one to say that Szoboszlai, it wasn't a pen at the weekend. He conned the ref, and he should have been overturned, but the ref, the VAR didn't. I mean, we'll talk about how great Szoboszlai is, but that wasn't a pen.
Players have got a lot to do here, Danny. I think Simon's right in that. Players have got to fall into line with this.
It's a balance between the petulance, time wasting, and stupidness. Get it all booked. Get them, and if they get sent off, fine. Who cares? You'll learn a quick lesson. The fine balance, and we complimented the refs last year and the officials on the higher bar on letting the game go and players not... Yep. Every time someone falls over or gets touched, it's not a free kick. And I think the game improved last season. Yep. Lots of people were talking about the positive aspect of referees letting the game go and not being fooled by people getting touched and rolling over like they've been shot. It's gone backwards a bit at the start of the season. I'd like to see that go back. And that's the balance they've got to try and find. But the big decisions generally... at the start of the season haven't been dealt with particularly well. And that's the bit that got
sooner than later, Simon. I think we need to hear from Howard Webb again as to how it's going. Are you weakening? Will games still go to 111, 115 minutes?
I'm sure we will.
Do. I tell you what.
And when we ask for Howard, we should be getting Howard.
I tell you what.
When we make an approach to the PGMOL.
I tell you what's impressive and better, even when they do mess it up, like whoever it was who pulled Gary O'Neill after the United game. Straight away, look, we've made a boot. They pull him and they tell him. And the old
never hear that from players in post-match interviews on Sky, do you?
And then you've got Fernandes a week later coming out and turning around and believing that he has a right to say something like, I'm assuming John Moss, when he's not busy singing with Culture Club, he's going to come over and apologise for what happened to us.
Even McAllister, Jim, even the decision on McAllister, how quickly they've done it.
Yeah.
Liverpool have appealed it. We've had a look. Boom.
See, 15 minutes should change. So what's your problem?
That's the way it should be, but it wasn't before.
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Friday mornings from 10. On AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.